Claire had been on her feet since the early morning shift at the hospital. Her hands were sore from changing bandages, and her mind was heavy from hearing patients cry out in pain. She loved her work, but she often felt like her life was not her own. She gave her time, her strength, and her heart to others. Yet when she returned home at night, silence always waited for her. That evening, when she finally sat down on the small couch in her tiny apartment, her phone rang. It was her friend Megan, who sounded nervous. Megan explained that she had agreed to a blind date with a man her aunt had set her up with. The man was supposed to be important and wealthy, a CEO who had lost his wife years ago. But Megan had cold feet. She begged Claire to take her place just for the evening, promising that no harm would come from it. Claire laughed at first and told her she could not do such a thing. But Megan pushed harder. She said the man would never know the difference because she had only seen him once from afar. All Claire had to do was meet him at the restaurant, sit with him, and then leave. Megan said she would tell him later that she had an emergency and had sent a friend in her place. Claire shook her head, but her friend's pleading voice pressed on. Tired and not wanting to argue, Claire finally gave in. She told herself it was harmless and only for a short while. She changed out of her nurse's uniform and put on a simple dress. It was not fancy, but it made her look neat and presentable. She brushed her hair, put on light makeup, and stepped out into the cool night. When she entered the restaurant, she felt nervous. The place was warm, filled with soft light and the low sound of music. People sat in pairs and groups, talking and laughing. Claire's eyes searched the tables until she saw a man sitting alone near the window. He wore a dark suit, and his posture was straight, as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. That was Ethan. He looked older than Claire had expected, but not in a tired way. There was strength in his face, but also sadness hidden in his eyes. He glanced up when she walked toward him, and his expression changed. Instead of the cold, guarded look he first wore, his eyes softened for a moment, as if he was surprised by something he could not name. Claire introduced herself, careful not to stumble over the lie. Ethan stood and pulled out the chair for her. His voice was deep, steady, and polite as he greeted her. Claire sat down, her hands folded in her lap to hide her shaking fingers. As the evening went on, Ethan asked her questions that went beyond the usual small talk. He did not seem interested in shallow words. Instead, he wanted to know how she saw the world, what she thought about people, and what she valued in life. Claire, caught off guard, answered honestly, forgetting that she was only there as a replacement. The more they spoke, the more she felt that this man was not like others. He carried himself with quiet power, yet he listened to her with real attention. When he spoke of his daughter, Lily, his tone changed. There was a gentleness in his voice, a pride that revealed where his heart truly lived. Claire found herself smiling at the way he described her laughter and her stubborn little ways. Ethan noticed the way Claire listened without judgment, and something stirred in him. He had been through many empty dinners with people who wanted his money or his name. This felt different. He could not explain why, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was sitting across from someone who saw him as a man, not as a CEO. Claire, meanwhile, felt her chest tighten. She had promised herself she would only sit through the dinner and leave, but already she sensed danger. Not the kind that brought harm, but the kind that could touch her heart. She was not supposed to feel this way. She was not supposed to care. Yet, as Ethan smiled for the first time that night, she knew the lie had already pulled her into something far deeper than she had imagined. Claire sat across the table from Ethan, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She had promised her friend that this was only for one night, but something about Ethan's eyes made her forget the plan. He was not trying to impress her with wealth or power. Instead, he looked at her as if he truly wanted to know who she was. Ethan leaned forward slightly and asked about her life. Claire hesitated. She did not want to reveal too much about being a nurse, afraid it might raise questions later, but she also could not bring herself to invent a lie. She kept her answers simple, saying she worked hard, cared about people, and valued honesty. Ethan nodded, as if her words meant more than she realized. "Most people I meet want to talk about my company," Ethan said. "They want to know how much I earn or what I own. You are not like that." Claire lowered her eyes, unsure how to respond. She wanted to tell him the truth, but held back. Instead, she asked him about his daughter. His face changed again, softening in a way that surprised her. He spoke about Lily with such warmth that Claire felt her heart stir. "She is everything to me," Ethan said. "She is the reason I wake up every day. Sometimes I worry she feels alone, even when I try to give her everything. Being a father is harder than being a COO." Claire listened, her chest tightening. She could see the pain behind his strong appearance. He was a man caring more than anyone could see. She found herself wanting to comfort him, though she had only just met him. Their food arrived, and as they ate, Claire noticed how easy it felt to talk with him. She laughed at one of his rare jokes, and he smiled in return. The smile looked unfamiliar on his face, as if he had not worn it for a long time. Time passed quickly. When Claire looked at the clock, she was startled to see how late it had become. She was supposed to meet him for only a short while, yet now hours had gone by. Ethan seemed in no rush to end the evening, and neither did she. When they stepped outside, the air was cool. Ethan walked beside her, his steps measured, his presence steady. Claire kept telling herself that this was all pretend, that she was standing in for her friend. But when he glanced at her and said, "I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed a night like this," she felt her throat tighten. She wanted to tell him the truth right then. She wanted to say she was not the one he was meant to meet, but the words would not come. She could not bear the thought of wiping the light from his eyes after seeing it return tonight. Ethan offered to drive her home, but Claire declined, saying she lived close enough to walk. He respected her choice and walked her to the corner. There he paused, looking at her in silence for a long moment. "Would you like to meet again?" he asked, not as a formality, but as two people who enjoy talking. Claire's heart thudded painfully. She had no right to say yes, yet every part of her wanted to. She hesitated, then nodded. "I would like that." Ethan smiled, a true smile that reached his eyes. "Then I will call you." When she finally walked away, her steps felt unsteady. Her mind kept repeating the promise she had made to Megan. This was never supposed to happen. She was only meant to replace her for one evening. But the spark between her and Ethan was real, and no matter how hard she tried, she could not deny it. As she reached her apartment door, Claire pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the strange mix of guilt and joy. She had stepped into someone else's place for one night, yet now she was the one who could not turn back. Claire tried to convince herself that she should not see Ethan again, but her phone rang 2 days later. His voice was calm yet warm as he asked if she would join him for lunch. She thought of saying no, yet her heart betrayed her, and she agreed. They met at a small cafe near the park. It was not a place one would expect a CEO to choose, but Ethan explained that he liked the quiet atmosphere. When Claire arrived, she saw him already seated, reading something on his phone. He looked up, and his face changed when he saw her. It was not the look of a man meeting a stranger. It was the look of someone who had been waiting for a familiar presence. They ate together, and once again the hours passed quickly. Claire spoke of little things, careful not to reveal too much of her work at the hospital, but Ethan still seemed interested in every word. He asked questions, listened closely, and shared pieces of his own life. She learned that he carried the company on his shoulders but still rushed home every evening to be with Lily. Later, Ethan surprised her by saying, "Would you like to meet Lily? I think she would enjoy your company." Claire froze for a moment. This was not part of the plan. She was already in too deep, and meeting his daughter would only tie her further into the lie. Yet when she saw the hope in his eyes, she could not bring herself to refuse. She agreed, though her heart trembled with guilt. On Saturday afternoon, Ethan invited Claire to his house. She expected a cold mansion, but though the home was large, it felt warm because of Lily. The little girl ran into the room with bright eyes and messy hair. She stopped when she saw Claire, then smiled and asked shyly, "Are you my dad's friend?" Claire knelt down and smiled back. "Yes, I am." Lily reached for her hand without hesitation. Within minutes, she was showing Claire her drawings and toys. Claire listened, praised her art, and even laughed when Lily insisted she sit for a pretend tea party. Ethan watched from a distance, his expression softening with every passing minute. As the afternoon went on, Claire felt her walls breaking. She had never planned for this. She had thought she would meet a lonely man for one dinner and then step away. Now she was sitting in his living room, holding his daughter's hand and feeling like she belonged there. Later, Ethan walked her out to the car. "She likes you," he said quietly. "She does not open up to many people. I think she feels something familiar in you." Claire's chest tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, but his words held her still. If she confessed, she would lose not only him, but also the bond that had begun with Lily. So she stayed silent. On her way home, Claire thought about the life she had just stepped into. She imagined what it would be like to return to that house again, to hear Lily's laughter, to see Ethan's guarded face soften. The thought filled her with both joy and fear. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment. She had entered this story by accident, but now she was tied to it in a way she could not undo. She knew secrets could not stay hidden forever, but for now she could not bring herself to walk away. Ethan, in his own home, stood by Lily's bed after she had fallen asleep. He watched her breathe and thought of Claire. For years he had trusted no one, but this woman had broken through his defenses with ease. He did not know why, but he felt as if she was meant to be in their lives. Days turned into weeks, and Claire found herself spending more time with Ethan and Lily. She told herself she would step away, but every time Ethan called, she said yes. Lily's laughter pulled her in deeper, and Ethan's quiet smiles made her heart ache with a longing she could not ignore. Yet guilt followed her like a shadow. Every time she saw Ethan's trust in her eyes, she remembered the lie that had started it all. She was not the woman he was supposed to meet. She had stepped in for Megan and never told him the truth. Megan noticed Claire's silence and finally asked, "Are you still seeing him?" Claire nodded slowly, unable to hide it. Megan frowned. "You cannot keep this going. He will find out. And when he does, he will hate you for it." Claire knew her friend was right, but the thought of losing Ethan and Lily crushed her. She had never wanted to deceive anyone. She had only wanted to help for one night. Now, her heart was trapped in a bond she could not break. One evening, Ethan invited Claire to dinner at his home. Lily sat at the table grinning as she told silly stories from her school day. Claire laughed with her, and Ethan watched them both. For the first time in many years, his house felt alive. He could see the family he had once dreamed of, sitting right in front of him. After dinner, when Lily had gone to bed, Ethan and Claire sat in the living room. The fire burned low, and the room was quiet. Ethan looked at her with an expression she could not read. "You have changed everything," he said. "Before you, life was heavy. I was only working and raising Lily. Now I feel hope again. I do not want to lose this." Claire's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to confess, but her lips would not move. She only nodded, though the guilt inside her grew stronger. The following day, Claire went back to her shifts at the hospital. She tried to bury herself in work, but she could not escape her thoughts. Patients and co-workers asked why she looked distracted. She smiled weakly and said nothing. Her secret weighed too much. That night Megan called again. "Claire, you have to tell him. It is better he hears it from you than from someone else." Claire agreed in her mind, yet her courage failed every time she saw Ethan's trust or Lily's joy. A week later, Ethan surprised her by stopping by the hospital with lunch. He had never done that before. Seeing him walk into the busy ward made her heart leap. Her co-workers whispered, curious about the tall man in the suit who carried himself with quiet authority. "You are working too hard," Ethan said, handing her the bag. "You deserve to be cared for too." Claire smiled, but her throat tightened. He had no idea who she really was in his life. She was a replacement, not the woman he had been meant to meet. That evening, she walked home slowly, torn between truth and fear. She imagined Ethan's face when he learned everything. She imagined Lily's tears. Inside Ethan's home, Lily asked him, "Is Claire going to be here forever?" Ethan looked at his daughter and hesitated. "I hope so," he answered. Those words, spoken with quiet hope, reached Claire soon after when Lily mentioned them during a visit. Claire's heart broke at the thought of disappointing them both. She knew the truth could not stay hidden. The more time passed, the more painful the reveal would be. Yet even knowing this, she found herself holding on, afraid of what would happen when everything came out. The day the truth came out began like any other. Claire woke early for her hospital shift, and Ethan called her on the way to his office. His voice was calm, filled with a steady warmth that always made her heart ache. He told her that Lily wanted her to come by that evening to help with a school project. Claire promised she would. But life has a way of pulling secrets into the light. Megan showed up at Claire's apartment that afternoon, restless and upset. "Claire, I cannot keep quiet anymore. This has gone too far. He deserves to know that you were never the one meant to meet him." Claire begged her to wait. "Please, just give me time. I will tell him myself. I just need to find the right moment." Megan shook her head. "The longer you wait, the worse it will be. Lies do not stay hidden forever." That evening, Claire arrived at Ethan's home as planned. Lily ran to her with open arms, dragging her inside with excitement. Ethan stood in the hallway smiling as he watched them together. For a brief moment, Claire wished she could freeze time, keeping everything as it was. They worked on Lily's project at the dining table, coloring and cutting pieces of paper. Ethan brought drinks and sat nearby, enjoying the simple scene. But just as laughter filled the room, the doorbell rang. Ethan answered, and Claire's heart sank when she heard Megan's voice. She had come, and she was not here to stay silent. Megan's words tumbled out quickly. She told Ethan the truth, that Claire had never been the one meant for the blind date, that she had only stepped in as a replacement. The room grew still. Lily looked confused. Ethan's face hardened, and Claire felt her breath catch in her throat. "Is this true?" Ethan asked, his voice low but sharp. Claire tried to speak. "I never meant to deceive you. It was only supposed to be for one evening. But then I met you and Lily, and I could not walk away." Ethan's eyes burned with betrayal. "You lied to me. You stood in front of me, sat at my table, met my daughter, all while hiding the truth." Claire's hands shook. "I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you, but every time I tried, I was afraid of losing what we had." Ethan stepped back, his face cold. "You have taken my trust and turned it into another game. I thought you were different. I thought you were real." Lily clung to Claire's arm, tears welling in her small eyes. "Please do not go," she whispered. Claire's heart broke. She kissed Lily's forehead gently, then stood. "I never wanted to hurt either of you. I love being with you, but I will not force myself where I do not belong." She walked toward the door, her vision blurred with tears. Ethan did not stop her. He stood frozen, torn between anger and pain. The door closed behind her, leaving silence in the house. Lily cried, asking her father why Claire had left. Ethan held her close but said nothing. Inside, his chest ached with a wound he had not felt in years. He wanted to believe Claire's words, yet the lie overshadowed everything. Outside, Claire walked alone through the dark streets, her heart heavy. She had lost them both, and the blame rested on her shoulders. She had stepped into a story that was never meant to be hers, and now she was paying the price. The days after Claire left Ethan's home felt longer than any she had known. She poured herself into her work at the hospital, moving from one patient to another, but no task could silence the emptiness inside her. When she returned to her apartment at night, the silence pressed harder. She thought of Lily's tears and Ethan's cold eyes, and the weight of her choice crushed her. Ethan's life did not return to normal either. He buried himself in meetings and endless work, but no business deal or contract could fill the hollow space Claire had left. At night, when the house grew quiet, he found himself staring at the empty chair at the dining table. Lily would ask about Claire almost every day. "When is she coming back?" she would whisper. Ethan had no answer, and his silence only deepened the ache in his chest. Lily grew restless without Claire. She stopped smiling as much, and her drawings no longer had the same brightness. She missed the woman who had listened to her stories and laughed at her games. Ethan saw the change in his daughter and felt powerless. He wanted to protect her, yet he was the one who had pushed Claire away. Claire, on the other hand, tried to convince herself that walking away had been the right choice. She had lied, and lies had no place in love. Still, her heart betrayed her every time she remembered Ethan's smile or Lily Claire's tiny hand in hers. She longed for them, but she had no courage to return. One evening, Claire sat alone on a park bench after work. She watched families pass by, parents holding their children's hands. The sight made her eyes sting. She wondered what it would feel like to walk beside Ethan and Lily, to belong to them without fear. But she pushed the thought away, knowing she had broken that chance. At the same time, Ethan sat in his office long after his employees had gone home. He looked at the framed photo of Lily on his desk, her bright eyes staring back at him. He thought of how she had laughed with Claire, how the house had felt full when Claire was there. He had not felt that warmth in years. Memories of betrayal still burned, yet another truth gnawed at him. Claire had not used him for money or power. She had never asked for anything. She had only given her time, her care, her heart. Ethan realized he missed not just her presence, but the way she made him feel alive again. A week later, Ethan found himself driving near the hospital where Claire worked. He did not plan it, yet his hands had turned the wheel on their own. He parked and sat there for a long time, watching the doors as nurses and doctors came and went. When he finally saw Claire step outside, tired but graceful, his chest tightened. He did not call out to her. Instead, he drove away, but the image of her lingered. He knew then that he could not keep living in silence. Lily deserved joy, and he deserved a chance at love, even if it meant facing the pain of the past. Claire, unaware that Ethan had been there, walked home with the same heaviness she carried each night. She whispered to herself that she had to forget him, yet her heart refused to listen. Their longing for each other grew stronger with every passing day. Both knew the bond between them had not been broken, only wounded. And though distance kept them apart, the pull was still there, waiting for the moment when one of them would be brave enough to reach across the divide. Ethan had spent weeks trying to bury his feelings, but each day only proved that he could not live without Claire. He had been hurt by the truth, but the pain of her absence was greater. Lily's sadness pushed him further. He knew he had to act, or he would lose the chance forever. One Saturday morning, he dressed simply, leaving his suit behind. He wanted to meet Claire not as a CEO, but as a man. He drove to the hospital, his hands tight on the wheel, his mind heavy with words he had practiced 100 times. Claire was finishing her shift when she saw him standing at the entrance. Her steps faltered and her breath caught. She had dreamed of seeing him again, but now that he was here, fear and longing crashed together in her chest. "Ethan," she whispered almost too softly to hear. He walked closer, his eyes fixed on hers. "I cannot stay away anymore. I know you lied at first, but everything after that was real. I felt it, and I know you did too. I cannot let this end like it did." Claire shook her head, tears forming. "You trusted me, and I broke that trust. I do not deserve a second chance." Ethan's voice grew firm. "You made a mistake, but you gave me and Lily more than anyone else ever has. You gave us warmth, laughter, and hope. I will not throw that away because of one wrong choice." Claire covered her mouth, trying to steady herself. Her heart raced at his words, but guilt still held her back. "I never meant to hurt you. I wanted to tell you from the start, but I was afraid of losing what we had." "You will not lose it," Ethan said, stepping closer. "Not if you stay. Lily asks for you every day. She needs you, and so do I." The tears she had been holding back finally spilled. For weeks she had carried the weight of sorrow, but now his words broke through the wall around her heart. Ethan reached for her hand. "Come with me now. See her. Show her that you have not left. And if you still want to walk away after tonight, I will not stop you. But please, do not leave without giving us another chance." Claire's heart trembled. She could not refuse him, not when the longing inside her matched his own. She nodded slowly, and he led her to the car. When they reached his house, Lily burst from the doorway. Her eyes lit up as she ran straight into Claire's arms. "I knew you would come back," she cried, holding her tight. Claire hugged her, her tears falling into the little girl's hair. Ethan stood nearby, watching them with quiet relief. For the first time since Claire had left, his home felt whole again. That evening they sat together in the living room. Lily leaned against Claire, half asleep after too much excitement. Ethan looked at Claire across the soft glow of the lamp. "This is what I want," he said simply. "Not money, not business, not empty company. I want this. I want you, Claire. Stay with us. Be part of our family." Claire met his gaze, her chest full of emotion. "Are you sure you can forgive me?" "I already have," Ethan said. "Life is too short to let fear take away what matters most." She reached for his hand, and for the first time, the guilt lifted from her heart. She knew the road ahead would not be perfect, but it would be real. As Lily slept soundly between them, Ethan and Claire sat together, their hands joined. The bond they had built was no longer broken. It was stronger than before, bound by truth, forgiveness, and love that would not let go. Ethan whispered the promise he had carried in his heart since the night they first met. "I will never let you go again."